That sort of helps. Okay, I am recording, and good morning to everyone. Welcome to the Writer's Circle, and I'm Tony Wilkins, in case you don't know. You guys can see me today, yay. And the Writer's Circle Summit is something that I came up with because I had so many writers that were aspiring writers who would come up to me and they would say, you know, I would really love to get some tips on launching my writing career. You know, I'm having trouble getting the word out about my new book, you know, whatever it is. Steffi, good morning. I'm going to mute you. And thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate that. Susie, I'm going to mute you as well, because we're about to get, okay. So I created this virtual talk for speakers to promote their books, to teach what they know about the writing industry, the publishing industry. Tanya Target, who spoke at my Women of Influence conference a couple of months ago, she's going to be calling in. And Tanya she gave a really terrific talk on how to generate over $100,000 of free publicity. And so when I ran into her, I said, listen, I'm doing this talk, you know, and I invited her to come on and be one of the speakers as well. So she'll be our final speaker. What I'm also going to do a little later on, and this is going to be a little different from what I normally would do. I want to do a panel discussion because I've got some questions for everyone about writing. How do you write? How do you get it published? What's been your challenges? Because part of what I like to do is I like to educate the listeners and the viewers in terms of what the process is in terms of getting your work published and getting it out there. So we're going to do sort of a quick roundtable discussion a little later on. So please stick around as long as you can, and I'm just going to ask you some questions, and people will just be jumping in and, you know, going from there. Okay, so a couple of house cleaning notes. Housekeeping, not house cleaning. It's going to be one of those Mondays. Number one, to the speakers, I will introduce you and make a personal comment and then turn it over to you. This event will go similarly to the live and on-site events. You have a half an hour to teach what you know and make an offer to the audience. After your talk, I will unmute everyone, and you can take questions from the audience. So if you are not speaking, please hold your questions till after the speaker is done giving his presentation or her presentation. Please be sure to type in your email address and website address and offer in the message section so that everyone can connect with you directly if they choose to. I will also make sure to email speakers with the attendee list so you can send a thank you email to all the attendees. If you are not speaking, I'm going to ask that you mute yourself. You are welcome to stay on camera if you choose, but I will be listening off camera so as not to distract the current speaker or the speaker who's speaking at that time. Feel free to take a break, get some lunch, go to the bathroom, come back if you choose. We also ask that you not eat your lunch on camera, as it can be distracting and no one wants to see you, you know, eat your lunch. Please save your questions till the end of the speaker's presentation. We will do a quick roundtable with the speakers at the end of the talk, so please be sure to stay on the call till the end. And once again, I want to remind everyone that I have 2 virtual networking meetings this month. On April 28th at 12 noon Pacific, we have the Influential Networking Group. And on April 30th, we have the Coaching Hour Networking Group if you're a speaker. That one is just specifically for speakers and coaches. On May 4th through the 6th, I'll be in Reno for my 3-day Making Money as a Speaker retreat. And I'll also be doing the Women of Influence Vegas tour. That's going to be on May 9th. So if you're interested in any of those, be sure to send me an instant message throughout the talk and I can send you the links in case you do want to register, and we'll go from there. So my talk today is, and I was thinking about what do I want to talk about, because as most of you know, I've published 5 or 6 books. I'm working on my 7th book. I publish magazines online. I do a lot of writing. So part of what I wanted to talk about is the top 10 things to know about writing and publishing. These are just basic. This is what you need to know in order to get published. This is what you need to know in order to write that book. So, and I apologize, my allergies are terrible today. The weather has been really rainy here in San Francisco, so we'll just sort of deal with it. Number 1, start writing. Many times we feel that the first draft must be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. What it must be is written down, even if it comes out as gibberish. That's the reason why it's called a draft and not a published work. The point of the draft is to get some of your thoughts down in a free-flowing style, and many writers suffer from writer's block, in my opinion, because they're so focused on making the first draft perfect, and then they freeze up. So don't do that to yourself. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be written down. You'll have plenty of time to make changes and before you submit the final work. Write on a regular schedule. This is number 2. Write on a regular schedule to make sure you're writing to a specific pattern. A lot of times I do a good deal of my writing at a local pub about 2 blocks from my apartment. A lot of writers will go to a coffee house to get their writing done, and I'm not that kind of a writer. I find it incredibly pretentious. It's like, look at me, I'm writing a book, whatever. For me, what seems to work is going to the pub, having a vodka cranberry. You guys know I love my vodka. Having a vodka cranberry and just sort of sitting and focusing on the writing, on the work. Part of the reason why I don't do a lot of writing in my apartment is because there are too many distractions. You've got people that are sending you instant messages. You've got people that are emailing you all the time. There are things around the apartment that you want to get done, and before you know it, you're distracted. You haven't done anything. So going outside of my comfort zone, really sort of helps me to focus on the work at hand. If you go to a coffee house and it works for you, terrific. It just doesn't seem to work for me. So that's just my 2 cents. Speak to sell more books. That's tip number 3. Most new writers feel that if they write a bestseller, then all they need to do is sit there and cash the checks. And that's the easy part. Writing the book is really the easy part. The real work begins after it's published, doing the promotion, doing the talks, that sort of thing. That's when you really see what the writing industry is all about. Tip number 4, strategize how you will sell your book before you write it. Many times a new writer will just write what they know without thinking about who they're writing for. Publishers and agents will usually do this for you, but if you really want to take charge of your writing career, or if you're a self-publisher, there's a self-published author, you need to be in on the planning. How will you promote the book? Who is your target audience? Are you planning on getting it into bookstores, or do you just want to sell it online? Understanding who will likely buy the book before you write it will help you sell more books. Tip number 5 is the money is in the speaking, not necessarily in the writing. Book yourself into as many speaking gigs as you possibly can that are applicable to your topic. Go to Eventbrite and go to Google to find conferences that are likely to host attendees, most likely to purchase your book. Okay, you always want to go to where your customers are. So if you can book yourself as a guest speaker or be on a panel, that will help you tremendously in terms of getting visibility for your book and hopefully selling more books. But the point is, the money is really in the speaking. It's in doing conferences, it's in teaching workshops, it's in doing keynotes. That's where the real money is, okay? Host your own book signing or book launch. Tip number 6. What any writer wants to do is connect with the readers. And a great way to do that is by inviting them to a reading or signing or launch. Tip number 7, get others to help promote your work. One of the best ways to create a buzz is by telling others and asking them to tweet about it or share a testimonial on social media. I see a lot of speakers who will come out with a new book and nobody knows about it because they haven't told anybody that their new book is out. So connect with people who can help get you where you're trying to get to, okay? Tell people, I've got a new book out. Would you mind tweeting it to your people? You know, doesn't hurt to ask. Understand that if you're self-publishing, it will not become an overnight sensation unless you have a large team, excuse me, dedicated to promoting the book. Part of the reason why writers go to literary agents and get signed with them and publishers and get signed with them is because they don't really want to have to worry about how they're marketing it. Marketing and promotion really difficult. It's a lot of work. It's very time consuming. When you're going the traditional route, usually it's the publisher who's handling all of that. All you have to do is sort of sit back. It's not that you don't have to do any promotion yourself, but they do the heavy lifting for you. So recognize that. Tip number 9, it doesn't need to be War and Peace. I have 3 of my, 6 books right here. The Career Whisperer, Influential Networking and Selling. The Career Whisperer, Behind the Podium. And The Single Person's Cookbook. What you'll notice about all 3 of these books is that they're about 100 pages, okay? Part of the reason why I do that is because, number one, I don't have the patience to write 500 pages, which is kind of interesting because when I started my career and published my first book, Telemarketing Success, it became a bestseller, and that was about 150 pages. And it took a lot out of me because I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. But what was fun is that I said, you know what? This was only 140 pages. It really shouldn't have taken as long as it did. But once it was published, I realized, you know what? This doesn't have to be 500 pages. I don't know where I got in my head that it did. So realize that if you really want to sort of put your writing career on the fast track, take the work that you have, break it up into smaller books to 150 pages, and that'll be book number 1, to another 150, that'll be book number 2. You can sort of break it up, and you'll probably make more money that way because you're selling it as a collection instead of one book. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to everyone. Tip number 10, trust your instincts. There will be people that will come into your life who will be naysayers. They will say, oh, that's a stupid idea. I don't know why you're doing that. I kind of have a rule. I don't tell anyone what I'm working on until after the book is done. Because what I don't want to do is be influenced by somebody else's thoughts or opinions or ideas. There's another more skeptical reason why I don't do that. Because what I don't want to do is hear somebody's ideas, make it my own, and then the next thing I know, I'm being sued because I've stolen somebody's ideas. So what I always say to new authors, tell no one until you're done. And that'll sort of keep things a little bit cleaner, if you know what I mean. I'm going to give you one extra tip. just, and this is tip number 11, just write the damn book. I run into a lot of aspiring authors who say, I'm working on something, you know, I haven't started writing, I want to be writing, but I don't know how to get started. If a writer tells me that they want to write a book and they haven't started yet, I know they're not ready to start. I know they're in that I'm fixing to start, or I'm getting ready to start, if you will. Just sit down and start writing. Again, back to tip number 1, even if it sounds like gibberish, write it down anyway, because you can always go back and edit and re-edit and make changes and that sort of thing. I've got a new book that's coming out in January called How to Make Shit Happen, which I'm really proud of. I'm actually putting together a tour for 10 cities for 2019. But one of the things that I'm also working on is a new novel, a new sci-fi novel, because I've always wanted to write a sci-fi novel. So I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. But in both instances, so yes, I am working on both books at the same time. So, but in both instances, I'm sort of just sitting down and I'm doing the work. That's the main thing. So if you have an idea, if you really want to get out there, if you really want to have get your work out there in a real way, sit down and write it down. And that's my presentation. I'm going to open it up for questions or comments. And I'm going to unmute everyone. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Tony. I like that insight on so many things that you said, that if you haven't started writing your book, then and talking about how you're fixing to get started, it's like it's the backbone of energetically moving forward. And I think a lot of people get scared, and it's so learning how to kind of scrub that area to do what you know is important, and everybody has something to say. And so maybe they're just not ready to, so maybe there's some steps before to get them so they can put the words on the paper. But I liked also how you said, just get it on the paper, get it done, and who cares if the rough draft is looking gibberish. I really like that one.
Yeah, absolutely. It took me 10 years, or nearly 10 years, to write Telemarketing Success. It was a simple book on B2B telemarketing, because as one of the highest paid telemarketers in the industry, I had a lot to say, and people were asking me for tips and that sort of thing. But it took me almost 10 years to write it, because I kept thinking it had to be perfect, and I kept thinking it had to be, War and Peace, 500 pages, 600 pages, and it really didn't. By the time it was done, it was 140 pages. And let me tell you something. Every literary agent and publisher turned it down, every single one, because they said there's no market for a B2B book on telemarketing. And so I proved them wrong. That's the reason why I say pay no attention to people who say no. Trust your own instincts. I knew that there was a market. I knew people would purchase it because they were already hiring me to do consulting. So I knew there was a market. It was really a matter of trusting myself enough to just sort of do that. So I thank you. Thank you, Rhonda. I appreciate that. Anyone else? Yes, no, maybe? Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop